Hey guys, Butts here, and today I want to talk about Archmage, in particular triggering as many Archmage linked skills as humanly possible. And the reason for that is because, Archmage is obviously the strongest support gem on an Archmage build, right? It's the namesake. But if it really is worth 2 to 3, of your next best support gem, which it tends to be, that means that the way theoretically to maximize damage would be to maximize as many skills that you're triggering a second linked with Archmage as opposed to just juicing the most powerful one. So here we are. That's what this build is. I'm using Cast on Crit, but you could do this with like something like Poet's Pen, Mjolnir, Cosprey's Cast on Crit, Lionized Paul's Cast on Crit. There's a million different ways to like Archmage Cat, right? So I'm using a Cast on Crit setup that can, with Awaken Cast on Crit, get up to about 20 spells triggered a second. You can use something like Lancing Steel, Blast Rain, Rain of Arrows of Saturation. I'm particularly using Blast Rain linked with Ice Nova and Vortex. The reason for this is because Katava's Thirst can trigger up to 10 times a second. So it has a 50% chance, so ideally you can get about 20 spells triggered a second, which should make it so that this triggers the maximum amount of times on average. And Katava's Thirst doesn't work like normal trigger skills. Normal trigger items. Normal trigger items trigger them in order. Like if I attack with a bow once, it'll trigger the first spell linked to Naznath, then I'll trigger the second spell. Katava's Thirst just triggers everything when the condition is met. So that means if this 50% chance happens, it's going to trigger everything I have linked in here, which could be 2 to 3 skills linked with Archmage. I have just 2 with Inspiration, so I can sustain my mana. So I'm just going to talk about some of the particulars of this build. Since it is technically an attack build, it means we get to rely on Mana Leech, which is incredibly powerful for an Archmage build, because normally you get to rely on Mana Regen as the only thing, but here we get to rely on Mana Leech and Mana Regen. So we should be able to maintain this giant hit pool pretty easily. We also leech life and ES, so that means when we're attacking, we're leeching our 3 mana pools or our 3 hit pools back simultaneously, which is pretty cool. This ES would be much higher if I had a Glorious Vanity for life as extra ES or Clarity Watcher's Eye with mana as extra ES. Since we are crit, we could use Khaleesi's Grace for +2 base crit if we spent 800 mana in the past 2 seconds. We easily spend 1,000 mana a second with our triggers, so we will always have that on while we are attacking. Originally, I was using Lionized Paws with Cast on Crit, GMP Greater Volley, and Frostbolt, which I don't know if you guys know. You can put Cast on Crit and Lionized Paws. This will trigger about once a second, and Rain of Arrows usually creates about 4 separate triggers with Cast on Crit. So the reason I was doing this is because with Frostbolt, you don't need a million of them on the screen to work with Ice Nova, right? You just need them to be on the screen, period. The problem is I wanted to use Ice Nova plus Vortex, and I have that, 2 separate setups for that same thing. And Vortex was eating way too many of the balls. It sounds stupid to say that. But so I had to switch to a Manaforged Blast Rain Cast on Crit setup with Frostbolt to make it a little more consistent. If you were just using Ice Nova or Ice Nova plus another skill that's not Vortex, you could continue to use Lionized Paws, even though I know these boots suck. It just buys you back a ton of sockets. So I want to talk about the leveling experience a little bit because it was kind of smooth, which is weird. I did not expect that, but I'm a huge advocate for beach to maps where you try to play the build you're in play maps as soon as humanly possible if it makes sense. And yeah, this actually worked out, so I'll talk about it. At level 8, I put on Naznath with Rolling Magma, LA Prolific Combustion. I put on Prismatic Burst and Split Arrow, and then I was self-casting a Flame Wall for single target. Around Merveil, I put on Duedries. Since we're scaling off of attack speed, not cast speed, it's just a huge upside for us. And then around level 20, I put on a Barracks Ring, and then a Praxis to help sustain the mana. And then in the middle of Act 3, I put on Foxshade. This item is crazy, move speed early on. 30% move, just like 30% movement speed, which you should normally always have, and then a ton of evasion, so you actually don't need auras, which is perfect for an Archmage build, right? Because you you can't really run auras. Anyways, at level 38, I became a true degenerate, and I switched to Cast on Crit. I took off my rings, put on Thief's Torment, put on Ungol's Harmony with an Accuracy Anoint. I put Cast on Crit, GMP, Frostbolt, level 1, and then increased critical strikes and a pair of Lionized Paws. I dropped everything in my Naznath for a Ice Nova, Archmage, Inspiration, and Controlled Destruction. I also tried to fit in a Frenzy, Manaforged, Life Tap, and Power Charge crit setup so that I could maintain Frenzies and Power Charge to help crit cap. I also put on a Diamond Flask. You will probably need to do Precision plus Arrogance at this point. And it's kind of hard to squeeze all that in, plus an Eternal Blessing with an aura. I would use Haste, Eternal Blessing Haste, pretty much well into maps, just because it's going to feel the smoothest. You're going to feel a lot zoomier. I did want to talk about this like kind of package, I guess, or just these together because they're both incredibly strong. Early on, when you're not crit capped, or like you don't have a ton of points to invest in crit because you want to invest everything into mana, Ellie Overload plus Ungle's Harmony is very powerful because Ungle's will help you crit cap, and then alongside like a Diamond Flask and the power charges, you'll be relatively close to being crit capped without much investment at all. And since you want to dump everything into mana, that's kind of ideal since you can't really invest anything to crit yet. And I want to take these mana nodes first anyway because it helps sustain mana and helps scale your damage, etc. I don't take this until my third lab. So what that means is I stayed on this until about level 88 because or 87 because quite literally I did not have crit on the tree yet. I took this node at 87, 88, 89, 90. So until then, I was just Ellie Overload plus Ungle's Harmony, which felt really good. In fact, I was more crit capped than that than I am in my current setup. I'm a little under now. But yeah, this might actually be the way to play it until like you have very good crit gear, just because you want to dump everything into mana, so you just don't really have the room. And then the other one I want to talk about that was also super powerful was Thief's Torment. I didn't switch off of this until about level 80. Because you're hitting so much that this is sustaining your mana in your life very well. And honestly, you don't really need Leech for a really long time as long as you're using Thief's Torment. It's very hard to switch off of this. I did eventually have to switch off of this because this is like a perfect segue to talk about downsides of this build. As you can tell from 2 unset rings, this build is incredibly socket starved. Like, I play socket starved builds normally, but this build, it is next level. You want to fit in a manaforged setup if you're using Ice Nova, which requires a 6 link. You want to fit in a double CoC setup, which requires a 6 link. This requires your helmet. You want to do Arcane Cloak, Sigil Power, Increased Duration, Arcane Surge. You can drop some of these supports, probably not Increased Duration. But that leaves you with literally 4 sockets left. You want to use a Blessing. That leaves you with 2 sockets left. This part, you can buy back the sockets by getting a Frenzy Charge on crit craft on your quiver. I need to re-gear a little bit. So then you can drop your Manaforged setup, so that'll buy back 2 sockets. And then you can maybe fit in some more stuff and maybe potentially drop the unset rings for like cerulean rings. But yeah, just fitting all of this in, or mark on hit setup, that's like actually really nice quality of life. But yeah, that is one of the hugest downsides build is holy socket starved. The other one is this build is pretty slow. Like, if you're used to playing bow builds that are like on Deadeye or Ranger or Raider, you're gonna have a lot of like inherent move speed. This build has 34 like base with like good move speed boots, and when you're using something like Lionized Paws, I had 17 move speed, which you feel really sluggish when your onslaught's off and your quicksilver's off. So that's just something to keep in mind. Is like that is one of the big downsides build. You could use haste, would help a ton with that, but this build doesn't have room for any, like it has room for 1 aura, so I choose my 1 aura to be defensive. Haste feels much better though, just, you know, I use that when bossing regardless. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about today. This build is definitely a work in progress, so please don't shoot the messenger if you try this and it's like a little jank, because I'm literally working through it now. Just as like a giant disclaimer, I am like actively kind of winging it. I have a PoB I'm going off of if anybody wants that, but yeah, I'm learning as I go. And if you guys are okay with potentially trying to help solve this kind of build with me, then, you know, feel free to follow along. You can find my character on PoE.ninja as well. I'll include some more notes in the YouTube description, but yeah, so, and I'm sorry about the quality. I know this quality of this video is a little bit lower than my normal ones, but it's middle of the league, and I just really want to get back to playing PoE. But I just want to share this build with you guys. So yeah, thanks for stopping by. See ya.